Hi, and welcome to another OpenMarch tutorial. In this video, we're going to talk about everything that you need to know about creating marchers and moving them around the canvas. To create marchers, what you're going to want to do is go into the top left where you see that group of people. Click on that, and you'll see the marchers dialog come up. From here, you see a few buttons. We're going to click the Add button to create new marchers. I want 20 marchers, and then the section I want them to be in is, let's say, tubas. 20 tubas seems like a reasonable amount. You'll see that the drill prefix filled into U, which is typically what tubas are, and the drill number filled into 1. Let's leave those alone for now and click the button that says Create 20 tuba marchers. Now, on the canvas, you'll see that we have our 20 marchers show up. Let's go ahead and exit the marcher menu and start to move these around. The first thing that we want to do is select the marcher that we want to edit. Let's go with the last one, U20. Click on it, and you'll see that the details of the marcher show up in the marcher inspector on the right. You'll see the number, U20, as well as the coordinates that the marcher is on the field. In this case, the marcher is 2.67 steps inside the 25-yard line on side 1. On front to back, the marcher is 8.56 steps in front of the grid back sideline. As we move the marcher around, you'll notice that its coordinates change. These are currently to 1/100th of a step accuracy, but you can adjust this accuracy later when you export drill charts. When you are editing drill, we keep it at a 1/100th of a step accuracy so that you know that a marcher is exactly where you want it to be. Now, if you want to select multiple marchers, you have two options. You can either click and drag to select multiple. You can hold Shift and select a bunch by clicking on them. Or you can use our lasso tool. To use our lasso tool, what you're going to want to do is hold the Shift button and then click and drag like you would for a box. You'll see a dashed line pop up, and you can draw any shape that you want, and whatever marchers are inside that shape will be selected. This is really good for asymmetrical shapes, so when you have marchers that you want to select that don't fit inside of a box, you can select them freely. To move marchers, you can also use the arrow keys. In addition to the arrow keys, you can also use WASD if you're a Major League gamer, but both work. You'll notice as you move the marchers that it isn't snapping to anything by default. This is because we don't have our coordinate rounding set. You can set coordinate rounding in OpenMarch to be anything that you want, whether it be to the half step, to the full step, to a quarter step, to the 1.735 step. It's really up to you, so you can customize it to your field. To adjust your coordinate rounding settings, click Coordinate Rounding in the top left and select what you want for each axis. Let's start with rounding to the 2-step for both. You'll see once you click 2 for both the X and Y, you'll see a 2 show up to the X and Y in the coordinate rounding settings. Try to move a marcher around, and you'll notice that the marcher only moves every 2 steps. If you need fine-grained adjustment, you can always hold Shift, and the marcher will move without the coordinate rounding setting. This Shift for fine adjustment is a common theme in OpenMarch, and it'll work for many things that snap to the grid. Let's align a bunch of marchers in a line with this 2-step coordinate rounding. Now, you can also adjust a custom interval for coordinate rounding. It doesn't have to be one of the options that we provided you. You can choose anything you want. For example, something that's really common for marching bands is to line up with the yard markers, which happen every 1.6 steps. To do this, let's define a custom rounding point only for the x-axis. For the x-axis, you press Custom, and then in the text box that appears, type 1.6. Click away, and you should see 1.6 appear right next to x, but y stay at 2. Now, the x and y are different for coordinate rounding because you might want to change what interval the marcher snaps at from the side to side and the front to back. Let's see what this means. When we try to move our U15 marcher, we notice that it rounds to the 1.6 step, like we expect. Notice how it's not exactly on the grid, but this is what we expect for yard markers. But it's still rounding to every 2 step on the front to back axis. Let's line these marchers up so that they are on a single line. Great, these tubas are now nice and comfy, really, really close to each other. Since this isn't enough tubas, we also want to put marchers in windows right behind them. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll select a bunch of tuba marchers, bring them down here, and put them in windows. Now, with our current coordinate rounding setting, we can't put them in windows because we're rounding to the nearest 1.6. We could hold shift to have a fine adjustment, but this is a bit tricky and isn't exact. There's a way around this. OpenMarch also allows you to define an offset for your coordinate rounding, which might sound a little bit confusing at first. Let me explain. Go to the coordinate rounding menu, click Enable Offset, and you'll see two new text boxes appear. Since we want to go in between every 1.6 steps, we're going to think 1.6 divided by 2. Let me get my calculator. It's 0.8. Now that we have an offset of 0.8, let's see what that did to the marchers. When I try to move my U4 marcher from side to side, you'll notice that it is exactly in between the point that the other marchers were. Let me get these marchers out of the way for you so you can see. This U4 marcher is now moving exactly in between the 1.6 step space. And again, this works for any interval on both axes. So I could even define my offset as 1 step and my coordinate rounding as 2 steps. And you'll see that the marcher is going at every 1 and 3 steps in between the yard lines. This is great for precise customization and having perfectly symmetrical drill to your use case. Even though I think this interval is very good for tubas, if you give this drill to any tuba player, they're going to be upset for some reason. So let's stretch it out so we don't have a bunch of complainers on the field. Let's select the offending section. And now we want to widen this interval. Currently, the only way to do this in OpenMarch is to use our group stretching feature. You can do this in a similar way to how you'd stretch an image in PowerPoint. Go to the end of the shape, hover over the box, and when you see an arrow show up, stretch the marchers out. Make sure your coordinate rounding is set to what you want. Clean it up a bit. This isn't very symmetrical right now, and that's because OpenMarch's stretches functionality still has a bit of quirks we're working out, but you can still make this symmetrical. Go ahead and select all of this. And now we can use our Evenly Distribute Horizontally button. When you stretch marchers, you can do it in any direction, whether it be vertically, side to side, scaling. You can even rotate marchers by using this box up here. When you rotate marchers, you'll notice that it snaps to every 15 degrees. But like we did with the coordinate rounding, if you want to have a more fine-grained adjustment, just hold shift while you're rotating, and you can adjust it to any angle you'd like. You'll also see the angle show up on this box on the side. And again, you can hold shift. You can also type in an angle, and that angle will appear. Great. We have a few more features to get through. Say you want to lock movement on one axis, whether it be X or Y. We have buttons for both that let you lock the movement on either axis. For example, if you only want the marchers to move up and down, you are going to lock the X movement. We can do that with the button up here that says Lock X Movement. This will make sense because with the up and down arrow, that means you want to move the marchers up and down. Click that button and try to move a marcher around. Notice you can move your mouse left to right, but it's not going to move at all. And you can move it up and down as much as you want. This is great if we wanted to move this whole line down. In a similar fashion, let's say we only want to move our marchers side to side. Press the Lock Y Movement button, and again, you'll see that the marchers only move from side to side. You can move your mouse up and down, but they will only move in that direction. To disable either of these, you can just press them again. The last thing we're going to talk about is the alignment functions. We looked a little bit at how we can evenly distribute marchers horizontally, but there's a few other things that we can do. To start, let's make this form that we're working with a diagonal. Great. So these marchers are already evenly distributed horizontally and vertically. Let's just double check. Yep. If we want all of these marchers to appear in the same vertical line, then we're going to align them horizontally. Look at the button that appears. Look at the button that looks like what we're trying to achieve, which in this case is align horizontally, and you can click that for them to all show up in the same line. The keyboard shortcut for this is Alt-H, or Alt Horizontal. On macOS, it's Option. If you want them to show up in the same horizontal line, in that case, we're going to align vertically. Since the keyboard shortcut for aligning horizontally was Alt-H, the keyboard shortcut for aligning vertically is Alt or Option V, which is also this button up here. To evenly distribute marchers on either axis, you can use the Evenly Distribute button, which is represented by 3 dots on either axis. For horizontal, use the 3 dots horizontally. For vertical, use the 3 dots vertically. That's all that you need to know about marcher movement and alignment, and we will see you in the next one.